And Twitter didn't want to go. We're going to try one more time. And I don't know what's going on with Twitter, but we will fix it later. Good morning, everybody. It somehow already is September 6th, 2024. I feel like I've been on the road the entire summer. So it's nice to be sitting at my desk here at Tales from the Heart, a podcast from the Hypertrophic Cardiomyopathy Association. And today I am joined by Dr. Matt Martinez, who were with me just a few days ago, riding on a bus through the middle of London, looking at that building we call the Shard.
It was awesome.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure who designed that one, but I think we have a difference of opinions in architecture. That's all I'm going to say.
And it stands out, right, in that landscape. It jumps out at you. It's hard to miss it.
It was very hard to miss it. But the rest of the sites were beautiful in London, I will say.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So we're just back from the European Society of Cardiology's meeting in London. We've done a lot of traveling. I've done a lot of traveling. You and I have crossed around the country. So I thought we would kind of start off this September with the theme of, number one, it's Septal Reduction September. So we're going to talk about myosin inhibitors. Should also give a shout out that it's AFib Awareness Month. So if you have atrial fibrillation, you're going to see a lot more content circulating through social media that maybe you can share and help your friends understand. Coffee time. Help your friends understand a little bit more about AFib. And if you didn't notice that ad placement there, these are our new coffee mugs from the HCMA. Big Heart, Big Life, shout out. They're going to be up on the website shortly for you to purchase on your own. That we've shared them with all of our podcast guests and volunteers who have certain amount of service hours. So to those of you with the mugs, thank you so much for your service. And if you want a mug, you can go online and get them. I just did a merch call out. Look at that. I think all trendy and social media anyway. So Matt, good morning. Are you ready for your trip?
All good. Back to the grind, buddy. There's lots of people to see.
Lots of work to be done. So I'm going to do a quick wrap up of just kind of where we've been since May and where our paths have crossed and some of the things we've done. So I'm going to go back to May. May was kind of pivotal. We went out to, I went to Lisbon, Portugal, to ESC heart failure to see the new data for cytokinetics get released, showing that they met their endpoints in their pivotal trial, Sequoia, and that things are looking very promising for aficamten. So that was a nice start to the summer.
Totally.
In June, we bounced out to the American Society of Echocardiography, and you and I were both in Portland doing education on imaging, and a number of our volunteers showed up to help people understand how to do provocable maneuvers. So the sonographers were actually scanning 4 of our volunteers. Shout out to my ladies. Thank you so much. So we got to talk more about imaging. We started to talk a little bit more about the role of AI in imaging and met with a couple of people who have some really cool platforms for that are being developed. So let's just pause there and talk a little bit about digital assistance, AI, machine learning in echo reads. So what are we thinking the role might be?
It's definitely coming, and it's coming for ECG screening faster, I think, than echo screening. But I think you think about it in a few ways. One is that it's sort of the overwatch, right? It's watching over the top. It can be overlaid into a normal reading system so that it finds little things and might alert you before you read this. Heads up, right? This is thick. Even if it just does that, wouldn't that be helpful? And then have the doc say, I wonder if this is HCM or if this is a phenocopy. At least to sort of, busy day, big stack of echoes, this could be challenging. The second is that maybe it culls out the normals, right? If it gets good enough that it then releases some of the burden on, again, a heavy echo stack where you say, it's really good at saying they're normal. Somebody might have to provide a quick look, but the report could be generated based on normal imaging and normal measurements. It's actually already been done, right? It's being done in MRI. So a lot of the software we use for CT and MRI reading already does that. It calculates the wall thickness. It gives you an ejection fraction that you can sort through. It gives you a edema rating and scar burden and things like that. Still got some work to do, but it's coming. And the third is that wouldn't it be great if this was as good as we think it is? It probably will be, that we could then roll this out into areas that have less opportunity. So any opportunity to increase awareness or increase access and improve our ability to be accurate is, I'm all in for all of those things. So the last part is the disparities, right? How do we get to patients who don't have the resources, can't drive to me, takes two bus stops to get here, or a train ride, or a car ride they don't have? What if it's a community, a state that just doesn't have access? Lisa, nobody knows this better than you. There are places in the country that are packed with HCM folks. You go to Boston, you got a ton of providers. You go to even the New York tri-state, there's a lot of providers. But you go to much of the Midwest, and there are some needs. And I think this could reduce that. Coupled with telehealth, I think this will really help.
I think the assistance of technology. We all know the computers are only as smart as the people that program them.
No doubt.
So jumping ahead in my summer, when I was just at ESC and you were there as well, and there's a couple of new companies that I was meeting with who are working specifically in the echo imaging and creating algorithms that can read normals versus abnormals. You still need a human to do the final read, and computers can make mistakes, but to see what's possible in terms of workflow. We know that a lot of our echo labs have been burdened because of the REMS program. So how do we find more time? Maybe technology can assist us in some of that imaging work eventually. That would be wonderful. And the scans can take less time because the computer can pick it up quicker than a stenographer can stop and take a measurement. So we build up some better workflow and put the stenographers to better use and give them a little bit of breathing time too, because they've been pushed to the edge in terms of their capacity to do the work. Yeah. So I think as a workflow, and this is where my HR hat comes back on, workflow and work management, I think it makes a lot of sense. We still need the technology to improve a little bit, and we need some guardrails on there so that AI doesn't put other people out of business, because we still need our doctors to interpret.
Well, right, and I think it'll never replace it entirely, right? It's never going to replace the integration of things, as well as, sort of experience and a little gray hair might afford you. And I remember Barry telling me this years ago, right? It's going to take you about 10,000 patients. And I thought, what? This is crazy. But he's right. It takes several years to get really over that 10,000 mark. We know that from other types of life, that repetition of 10,000 times or not. I really think that this can help streamline our ability to get to more people and to do it also a little more vanilla, right? How do we make sure that it's even across the board? And if you think about mavacamten or aficamten, the ejection fraction is really close to being accurate by AI. So if that's all you need follow up with, which most of the time that's all you need after a few months of stabilization, you can go down, get a 1 minute scan. AI gives you what you need, and out you go. That would really make it effective.
And there's additional potential. There are handheld scans for people in remote areas that we might be able to someday give somebody a cell phone. They hold it up to their chest, and it gets sent to their center of excellence for review, and you have monitoring from home. That's probably 10 years out, if I were to guess.
Agreed.
But I think we can actually talk about how we're going to create those systems.
Right. So, and we know that there's an unmet need. I mean, there's, as you know, hundreds of thousands of folks who have not been diagnosed. Many of them are obstructive, who we have therapies for right now. You and I talked about it over the weekend, being diagnosed with mitral valve prolapse or some other phenomenon, exercise-induced asthma, when, the cure might be just a little bit of medical therapy.
Absolutely. So somebody in their comments, Joshua, just brought up international care. And yes, telemedicine options are great, but having technology at the patient's site and then working with Telemed for that international experience of evaluation. He's a U.S. expat, and I know the case, and he worked with the Leahy Virtual Clinic, and others have worked with other programs, virtual clinics, but those options are available as well. But it'd be better if we could do the imaging and have that done in real time.
Totally.
So we're still working on that whole ESC model, and I've submitted a proposal for next year where maybe we're going to bring a few more patients to the table and show different anatomies of HCM. So we'll wait to see if that gets approved or not. But you might be getting some requests to join us in Nashville for another imaging meeting next September.
Awesome.
So then, I went up to Seattle, and we had a number of site visits up there. So if all goes well, next July, we're looking to do an in-person meeting in Seattle to launch our entire new programs in the Pacific Northwest and get the Pacific Northwest a little more engaged in our programming. So stay tuned for that. But the big Mac Daddy that we're both just getting over our jet lag from is ESC. So what was your biggest aha moment or takeaway from ESC 2024?
I've said it before, and I'm happy to say I can continue to say it because it keeps getting better and better. I mean, has there ever been a better time to be an HCM patient or an HCM doctor? The answer to that is no. It got better again. So we had another incredible ESC weekend where we learned about aficamten and its follow-up studies, sort of branching on Sequoia, right? So it reached out of Sequoia. Now these were sub-studies, so to speak, and some more engagement from that data set, which continues to produce. And what we saw was that it demonstrated significant improvement in now LV structure and function. So remember, for those listening, Sequoia is the trial looking at aficamten versus placebo. Much like we saw in prior studies with mavacamten, this was looking to see if it worked or not in a placebo, and it did. It showed reduction in LVOT gradients, improvement of symptoms, and it's been very effective in that regard. The second, now this talked to us about improvements in the other stuff that as the physician side, we spend a lot of time looking for correlates for improvement, not just patients saying they feel better, but some objective data. So we saw improvements of peak VO2. We saw improvements of KCCQ as well as NYHA class, which are both kind of tools we use to look for symptoms in patients. And then really what we love to see is some changes in NT-proBNP and high sensitive troponin, all of which showed improvement with aficamten with really minimal decline in left ventricular ejection fraction and some improvements in the cardiac score. So overall, we saw what we hope to see, which was, again, multiple structural and physiologic parameters improve in obstructive HCM without that adverse effect of LV systolic dysfunction. Just another win, right? Is that what you saw?
I did. I saw lots of great data, not only on the Sequoia trial and from the CYTO team, but some really promising information from our BMS teams.
Yeah, we didn't get there yet, but yes.
Yeah. So the concept of myosin inhibitors has definitely permeated. We know that they work incredibly well, and figuring out who is going to benefit from which and at what dose and who's the right choice at the right time.
Yep.
This is a really good problem to have.
Totally. And the mavacamten data kind of just at least what I saw was that now we have long-term data. So patients always want to know, is this safe? So we have patients now on this multiple years, 6 years plus, and now we have data showing that not only is it safe long-term, 3.5-year data shown during the ESC, but mavacamten showed efficacy that was sustained. This was a 3.5-year follow-up of the LTE data. So that is really powerful when you're talking to patients about maybe postponing a surgery or eliminating a surgery. Is this going to not only be a good thing for me in the next 3 to 6 months, but is it going to be good for me for the next 48, 60 plus months? And the answer to that is yes. We saw marked improvement as we saw from previous studies, but then it was sustained, which again, huge win if you're a patient. This is a long-term potential solution for many who aren't surgical candidates or don't want it.
So I'm super pumped when I walk into a conference and the first thing I see in front of me is, HCM is written on some bizarre piece of furniture, wall, or what have you. So we had the little stools that I have some cute pictures of people sitting their derriere on HCM education, which I thought is adorable. And then we had a lot of, commercial interest through the, CAMS-IOS pathway. But as you walked the floor of all the booths, thick hearts are present. Okay. Yeah. So as HCMA, like 8-10 years ago, we changed our tagline to serving the HCM spectrum disorder community since 1996. And didn't dawn on me that nobody knew what the hell I was talking about in terms of spectrum disorders, meaning amyloid, Fabry's, Danon, HFpEF, rhesopathies, all these different reasons the heart is thick. So our new branding of a home for the big-hearted has their double entendre there of big-hearted. So seeing all the ATTR, all the amyloid stuff, the Fabry stuff, the HCM stuff, the HFpEF stuff, thick, stiff hearts are finally, we've made it to the top of the pile of cardiology problems that we can now start to address and cure. We don't really talk about people until we think we have something that makes them feel better and that we can improve their lives. And now between the myosin inhibitors, the myosin modulators, the cardioenergetic drugs that are being created, such as Imbria, using SGLT1s and SGLT2s like we're going to be doing with the Lexicon study. There's just so many opportunities now for better treatments. And then, of course, we're at the precipice of gene therapies and gene editing in this space. And ESC was just electric with content. We had over 600 physicians from around the world come to our booth to get HCM Academy education and to learn about our HCMA international programs. And we're offering to rebrand all of our materials with their organizations or with their countries. They're going to be translating it. Hopefully by year end, we'll have information in at least 10 languages translated. That's amazing.
Well, you've got institutional memory on this. Remember the old days, but Marty and I would talk about, walking to the end of the conference. You were always in that, how are we going to present? Well, I don't know, we're on the last day and we're all the way at the other end of the conference center. I'm sure it'll be you and I, at least 7 other people. And boy, have those days changed. Now we're front and center and people are interested. And I think you can't understate or overstate, I should say, what you just said, that it's really more than just thick HCMs, because if you're looking for those, you're going to find the others too.
Yeah.
We diagnose a TTR every month. We diagnose a Fabry every other month. And then you got to decide what to do with it. And how do you handle that? Of course, sometimes we're smart and we think about it ahead of time. Sometimes the genetics tell us that after they come back. And as you know, we added a genetic counselor in the next few weeks. She'll be joining us, and we couldn't be more excited to offer that on site to patients because it's changing. And if you've got TTR amyloid, boy, rather than me saying I'm going to start a medical therapy and transfer you, hopefully we can find somebody comfortable. Now we have an opportunity to try and build a program around that too, so that patients can stay in the same place. So it's never been a better place to be thick. That's for sure.
Exactly. And we are really looking forward. The other thing I did while I was in Europe is I attended the Global Heart Hub Cardiomyopathy Council meeting, and we were able to meet with our fellow advocates from around the world. We had people there from Spain and from Germany and from Australia and all parts of Europe, Scandinavia, all over, and in India. So a lot of amazing advocates out there trying to raise awareness. And we know that this is the time to make these alliances with other organizations. I was able to meet all the international amyloid organization heads. I'm like, look, we're going to help you get to the differential diagnosis of the heart, and then we're going to refer off to the Fabry's organizations and the amyloid organizations and the rhesopathy organizations to take care of the rest of the body systems that are impacted by those disease states. But when it comes to the thick heart, we want to be your home. We want to help you figure it out. We want to help you find your resources. And you bring up genetics, and I'm so glad that you guys are bringing in a genetic counselor just for the program. And that everybody will have access to that pre and post genetic counseling from genetic testing.
100%.
Happy to tell you that about 3 weeks ago, I met with the lead team at Invitae, who has now been merged into, acquired by LabCorp.
Yep.
And the team kind of went intact. So it's most of the core Invitae scientists and systems. But you might have better access to getting the testing because now we also have the LabCorp network that they're going to be working with as well. So there might be a little easier access for some people to get access to that testing. So stay tuned for more from me on how those programs may change. And if you do have HCM right now and you want genetic testing and you haven't had it, there are some sponsored genetic testing panels that are being offered right now. Tanaya is supporting one of them. So if you want gene testing and you haven't gotten it yet, you can contact HCMA and we can align you with the program that can help you get it at this point. But Matt, congratulations on adding to staff with that important position.
Yeah, we're excited. I mean, as we continue to grow, we've got to evolve and make sure we're serving the community, right? I mean, and telehealth will be part of that too for follow-up visits. I mean, the idea is to improve access, and that's the plan.
I think that's a very good plan. And I want to dive into the other thing that we talked about at ESC on our bus ride across London to the restaurant that was very nice. But I got to tell you, when I left, we were just chatting our way in. I turned around and I'm like, how the hell do I get out of here?
I had the same experience. I thought, boy, we went downstairs at one point. Where are those stairs?
I called an Uber. The Uber's like, where are you? And we looked on a map. I was 14 minutes away from him. I'm like, forget it. I'm out. And I just kept walking until I found the London Bridges tunnel. And I just took the tunnel home. And then I realized, wait, I got a sideline on the story. Then I realized I was within walking distance of some place called London Bridges Hospital. And as part of HCMA folklore, I was in a internet chat room, which I think they called news groups in 1995. And a gentleman by the name of Clive Layton from London Bridges Hospital gave me the name of Carolyn Biro. And that man changed my life.
Wow.
And I still someday want to, Clive Layton, if you're out there, this is all your fault. Everything that I have built was because of that one line in a news group in 1995. Anybody who can find Dr. Clive Layton from London Bridges Hospital, there's a mug in it for you.
I love it. I'll tell you, the medical history is fascinating. So when we were in London, the part of the CRI organization, we had a meeting for them, as you know, right after ESC, and Donald Tier came up. There was a trivia question about Donald Tier. So the room, of course, most of the room knew exactly who they were talking about. I was one of a handful that said, well, this is tear disease, right? That's one of the names that we used to call hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So it's actually fascinating history on that side of the pond too, right?
I think any country that has had an established medical system has had their terminology change at least a dozen times with HCM. I mean, I was diagnosed IHSS, as many who listen were told back in the day. And then we have all of our different variations of HCM over the years. Tier's disease, Brock's disease. 2 people came to my booth at different points over life and told me that they named HCM and they were one of the 70 names. I'm like, oh, so you added to the chaos, huh? So we had a lot of names. So anyway, we went to this beautiful restaurant to have a conversation about artificial intelligence. And we met with our friends from Viz.ai and we talked about strategies. And this is EKG reads. And why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what we did and some of the conversation and some of the concerns?
Yeah, so Viz.ai is the only FDA approved AI platform to investigate ECG for hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And it's the first. It certainly will not be the last. And we're all trying to figure out what that means exactly. What does AI mean? Who does it? How do they do it? What's the secret sauce? And nobody knows the answer to that either. We are doing some research on that same topic here. We're about to publish a paper on this showing the ability for ECG AI to look to detect hypertrophic cardiomyopathy findings. So if you're an HCM patient, there are some classic, some typical ECG findings we see in the majority, at least 90%, depending on your age group and whatnot, have those findings. So the AI can look through and identify those. And then again, alert your physician, hey, have you thought about this? So that she or he can say, I hadn't thought about that. Let's get an echocardiogram. And diagnosis is key. Diagnosis is key. We've been doing it the same way for 25 years, trying to educate folks to say this is the pattern, this is the echo, but we're busy and it's harder to find it. So this is a tool that could sit in the background and work overtime. And you think about the volume of places that have ECGs for hospitals that may not have the expertise, or 50 to 100 cardiologists over reading the ECGs. Boy, it's hard to get them all educated and up to speed on all of the diseases and ask them to call out just the one, right? So AI will sit in the background and do that. We already use it for other aspects of ECG interpretation anyway. So this is now another layer to that. And again, it goes back to what we said before. Is this going to improve access? Is it going to reduce disparities? Is it not going to look at an ECG with any jilted feelings about who they are and taking some subjectivity to it? And then the thing that I'm excited about is what's it going to teach us that we can't see? It's going to look at the ECG and tell us, hey, you think this is normal? It's not. And for those out there, the ECG, the AI technology for ECG can already look at an ECG and tell you if it's a man or a woman. It can already look at it and tell you what age they are. And beyond that. But just as a basic level, it's amazing that it could look at a picture and say, this is a 35-year-old woman. That's amazing. And what else is it going to teach us when it looks at HCM ECGs? Is it going to tell us how thick they are? Is it going to tell us about what their other risk factors might be? Are there T-wave changes? Are we going to improve this risk stratification platform that we've gotten really good at, but we still have some holes in? Is it going to improve on that? And Viz AI is all in. I mean, holy cow, are they all in, right? They are digging in and engaging more hospitals. They're going to have millions of ECGs to try and improve this. And then, Lisa, you can't be more excited about the ability to go to a hospital in rural anywhere and find a hospital that's doing a good job, but is missing ECGs. And this is an opportunity to find them.
I couldn't agree more. We have so much to learn about the technology, but we've already got such a good foundation.
Yeah.
And, as we're sitting there talking about the role of this particular technology, which is, one supplier, one technology.
Yep.
There are others that will probably be out there as well, but these guys are definitely ahead of the game. They're talking to the right people. They're using the right mindsets to help evaluate the algorithms and interpret what they're finding in the digital read, but confirming it with clinical expertise. And that, I think, is what's going to make this really, really amazing. But take a step back with me and think, okay, what's our strategy to find the undiagnosed? So we want laws in place that every well child's examination includes family heart health history and a base evaluation of whether or not that child and that family need to be sent for additional follow-up. So if we can get these laws passed in every state, and then this technology continues to kick up, yes, the first thing we're going to be doing is asking for the questions to be asked and the surveillance to be done from the clinician's point of view. But then being able to say, hey, docs, we can help you with some of these EKG reads for these things that are a little complicated that you don't see very often. And offering an assisted ECG read to these physicians may become very beneficial and help us with the surveillance. And we only have about 800,000 people in the US alone to find. So everybody get out their little, magnifying glasses and start helping us find them all. But I think we're close.
Yeah, I think the technology is evolving faster than we thought it would. I think we definitely need to take a step back and look for where the issues might be. Where's the risk for the patient? Where's the risk for the clinician? If AI says it is and you say it isn't, what's the risk related to that? Who's right? So I think that all those things need to be sorted out. But isn't it great to be in a place where we're talking about how a better technology can be in place to try and model after other technologies have done this for other aspects? So we know we're doing this for mammograms, we're doing it for chest x-rays, that they're doing it for CT scans to look for strokes. Again, it's an overreach, right? It's the ability for maybe it to be ahead of the doc who looks at it. And then when she looks at it and says, yep, these are my top 5 likely findings, and then they sort out which is the answer. I like this from my standpoint. I think it streamlines things, as you said earlier.
I think we also need to be acutely aware of workflow, right? People are what make healthcare happen. Yeah. It's not a system. It's not a hospital. It's not a building. It's human beings doing each step of the process. And if we can make it easier for people to do their jobs more effectively in a safer manner, then we all win. And I can't help but look back as we're moving forward, because if you told me in 1995 or 1996 that this is where we would be today, I would have said, yeah, nice joke. It's not going to happen. Like, true. How the hell would I be able to, build this thing and get all these people and talk to all? No, this isn't going to happen. But it was 1995, and there was this new thing called the internet. Okay, so we came up with, a website, which was pretty cutting edge at the time. And here we are again at the cutting edge of technology in healthcare, and what I see as the next great movement. The internet was great. We democratized data and information. You didn't have to go to a medical library to pull out a journal. You can just search something. So we're sharing knowledge, but how do we now really employ it to be more useful to our everyday? Agreed. So I'm working on a couple of things here that I can't disclose yet, which, Lisa tells everybody everything all the time, but not this time, because the next thing we're working on is very technology focused and potentially something that will be incredibly useful to patients, especially newly diagnosed or
super exciting,
so that they can maybe get a little bit more insight as to what their options might be, so that we can really elevate shared decision-making to the level I believe it should be at. And that's an equal conversation between the healthcare provider and the patient, where we're really all ready to have that discussion. I love shared decision-making.
Yeah.
But how do you share when you know a lot more than I do because you're the doctor and you had all this training?
Well, and then consistent across programs, right? I mean, I think each of us does it a little different. It's really hard. I mean, I've asked Steve Ahmed about this, and Marty Marin and Melinda Tsai and others who do this equally volume as do we. And the challenge is we all do it a little different, and we can't write it down how clear it. We can't give you the playbook. We have some steps that we hit, but it's rarely 1 through 5. It's usually 1, then 3, then maybe 1 again, and then we go to 4 and back to 5, and those are really challenging discussions. A platform to do it a little more uniformly, and then the aspect about shared decision making we really talk about is time. We need people to give some time to digest it. Go home, talk to your mom and dad, talk to your spouse. Do we really want to do this? And make sure we're all informed.
All excellent points. And it's that processing time and that learning time. And sometimes patients just want to sit in and focus themselves and think about what they want. And sometimes that's all just too much. So that's where we offer the discussion groups and a navigation call and getting peer-to-peer support and getting your family's input. But you got to be careful, because people think they know things that sometimes they don't know.
Totally right. You can't. That is absolutely key, right? Just because your experience with HCM was whatever, doesn't mean they all go like that. And I've teased you before. I think you've had them all. you've had literally every potential issue, and still standing. Obviously, better now than before with a new look on life with your heart. So. Your experience is different than everybody else. Some, as you know, don't even know they have it till they're 55.
And we're very jealous of those individuals who remain asymptomatic for a long period of time, and we envy them. And we wish they stayed asymptomatic forever.
Yeah.
But when things start to change, patients need to know. Without names, I spoke to a gentleman yesterday who has been one of our rare elite athletes for a long period of time. He's approaching his 5th decade, and he's asymptomatic, generally speaking. And he's like, well, yeah, I checked in with this one and that one, and I'm good to go. And I do this particular sport at an elite level. I'm like, wow, that's pretty hardcore. When was your last echo? And what numbers do you track for yourself?
Right.
Well, he hadn't been watching his left atria very closely. And I'm like, honey, that measurement needs to be discussed with your care team. And he's like, but my ejection fraction is so high. I'm doing good. I'm 75. I'm like, that's not exactly how it works. And you need to have a conversation about what the meaning of an extremely high EF and a dilating left atria mean for your long term. Because you're able to do something right now, but what's happening next? Which brings me to the debate that I attended at ESC, which I don't believe you were at.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so 2 physicians argue the pro and con. Should people with HCM participate in competitive athletics? The debate that has been going on at every conference that I have attended since 1997. And I don't like the conversation very much, to be very honest with you, because I'd like to see the floor time used for something that impacts more individuals.
100%.
So I have said, come on, guys, are we done yet? So I sat in the audience and I listened dutifully, and it was really one of the best, most balanced pro and con conversation, and it really came down to nuances. So, of course, they bring up the LIVE HCM trial and the ICD and athletes trial and Ben Levine's trial, all of which HCMA helped recruit for every one of those trials. So I got up and I said, look, congratulations on a very well-balanced, and I'm probably the best judge of this one because I think I've sat through this more than most of you. And it was a really well-done presentation. And Erin Baggish was moderating, and I'm like, Erin, you did a great job moderating, keeping this balance. Thank you so much. We've been participating in this for so long, but we really need to get better information on the obstructed population in athletics and the apicals. We're not subdividing them down yet. It's HCM, no HCM. Yeah. And I think we need to get down a little bit deeper. So I kind of threw that out, like, let's work on that one next time. And props to Erin for, after I made a comment, Erin and I have never met in person.
Really, super smart. Good friend. He's a good friend.
Super good guy. And I've been following his work. We've been on papers together, but I'd never met him in person. And he's like, you know what she does? And then he basically gave an ad for the HCMA during ESC session. So thanks, Erin. Appreciated that one. So I think our message has gotten through loud and clear. Patients want to know what's safe to do, and we need guidance, and it's getting better. And I appreciate all the work that has gone into this space. Again, I don't think we were wrong in the past, excluding individuals because of safety concerns, but AEDs and CPRs and better risk stratification, we can do better, but we're never going to get 100% accurate with this. So there's always going to be some element of risk that I think everybody needs to understand if they're going to participate in certain life activities. Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a big sporting event. It could just be a hike in the woods on a hot day. So I think we need some better guidance on some anatomies, but bravo on where we've gotten so far. And I know you've had a lot to do with that, Matt. So thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, this, I live in this space multiple a week. Even at that elite level, we find and try and sort through the weeds of what their risk might be and what they want to do, right? What the athlete wants to do, and then what they can safely do. It's not them saying, I want to do this no matter what, and I just buckle. It's the opposite. We are creating a plan of safety. Every problem has a solution, and you may not love the solution, but we're going to come up with a solution for you. But what I really I thought you were going to go down this road, and I'm happy with where you went, but I really want to remind everybody that this still should be a conversation. You don't have to play in the NBA to have to exercise. And I really think that we have come a long way even in that discussion where we do an exercise prescription as best we can with everybody who comes in. And sometimes it's not on the first visit, but we do it over time. And then I try and remind them at the annual visits about what they're doing. At the CRI, the CRI organization in London, they had an athlete there who was from a different country who had a defibrillator and was disqualified from sports early, ended up getting a defibrillator, and now is working his way back through, and then won a recent championship at his level in his 30s. So still participating at elite level. And what he reminded me of is that they're going to exercise anyway. So it's important for the providers to engage them and talk about what they're going to do, and then try and curb that a bit if it's too much. We had an athlete earlier this week who talked about, his pace, and I kind of ratcheted it down a little bit based on some events and said, maybe it's too fast. And are you hydrating? Who's there? Show me the video. He had a video, which I think that he showed me and we talked about. And I just think it's important to get people out there and exercise. So mild to moderate exercise is generally the rule for virtually everybody with HCM. And we should be able to talk to them about that and encourage folks to stay fit and to keep their weight down. And it's more than anything else, as you said, that small percentage of folks that are going to play in the elite level. Let's talk about that big piece of the pie and try and keep people out of heart artery disease.
And I think we're getting the message across that exercise is good, walking is good. For my newly diagnosed people who are watching, I typically say, for right now, keep it to a stroll, wait till you get risk assessed, and then figure out a plan. That doesn't mean you have to stop doing everything forever, but maybe for a short period of time while we don't know what your risks are to keep you safest, we get you assessed, then you get back onto a plan. I still do dream of a day where we can get an exercise prescription covered by all insurance companies so that you know what safe exercise feels like. Sometimes people have to pay extra for that out of pocket, but it's worth it. I do have a question that was posed this morning. It's a little off topic from this, but I said, I'm going to address this today because it comes up a lot. So a participant in the private group said, you got to love doctors who say, follow a low sodium diet, but never tell you exactly how to do that. Then you go crazy trying to cut all the sodium out of your diet. But is a low sodium diet necessary for the average HCM patient?
Oh, it's a great question. So because it's heart failure, we often go down the low sodium, restrict your fluid for most patients with cardiomyopathies. Usually, when we're talking about that, we're talking about congested folks who have congestion. They're holding on to too much volume, and usually that's a reduced pumping function. So it's an ejection fraction in the 30s, 40s, or below. For the HCM patient, that's the unusual group. You don't usually see an HCM patient that low who isn't in trouble with congestion and usually going down a different route. The vast majority of HCM patients, I'm telling the opposite. So you mentioned an ejection fraction of 75%. For patients, they always ask me, well, what's normal? And I tell them, it's somewhere between 50 and 60-ish is a normal. So below that is a little reduced, sometimes normally. A little reduced is sometimes you find in the athletes, but then 65 and above is actually abnormal again. You generally don't have ejection fractions of 70 or 75. And of course, it never reaches 100%. It's not like a test where 100 is the best. It's actually right in the middle. 45, 48, 50, 55, 58, those are kind of normal ejection fractions. So for most patients in HCM, they're actually 70 or 75%. And I'm hydrating them. I'm telling them sometimes to liberalize a little bit of salt, depending on what their high blood pressure, if they have high blood pressure or not. But I'm often liberalizing that a little bit so that they can hold on to water. You got to prime the pump, right? So you've got to fill it up. And that cavity is smaller because the muscle is thicker. So by filling it up with water, you fill it up. And then we talk about how much water per day, should you use electrolytes or not, how much electrolytes, etc. Is caffeine excluded? No, but it doesn't count towards your hydration, right? Can you have a bourbon or a beer? Sure, but it doesn't count towards your hydration. It does the opposite of that, and we try and go through all that. So it's really important, and I think the athletes are the same way. When I'm telling them that they need to do more time on the Peloton because their risk is really low and they're in their 50s, and I'm worried about heart artery disease. Part of that discussion is diet. Are you preparing? Are you eating well? And are you hydrated? Every single one should have that discussion. Really important point. Really important. And often forgotten.
And some people who have particularly low blood pressure may actually be given salt tablets Florinef and things on that nature to get the sodium level a little elevated so that they hold on to more fluid.
Yeah.
So if you're being seen at a general cardiologist's office and they've advised you to do salt restriction and fluid restriction, please check in with an HCM specialist. You might be aggravating your underlying HCM by depleting yourself of fluid. So I saw that one on the Facebook group this morning. I said, I'm going to cover that in today's
100%.
podcast.
Really important.
So,
and seemingly trivial, right? Seemingly trivial, but it can cause some harm. So I'm glad it came up on the Facebook and today.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're running towards the end of the hour, and we have a couple of other announcements to make. Number one, on Saturday night at the International Summit in October, which would be October 26th, we have secured Barrett Haynes to come back and perform with us, and he will be accompanied by violinist Nori Hadley, all the way from Wisconsin. So they're going to be practicing over internet, and they're going to be performing for us at the summit, as well as probably doing a little bit on the day of the HCMA patient meeting, which is the 27th, which I know you'll be at. But other events coming up this fall include, get ready for this because this gets a little hectic. The HCMA will be participating in both the HCM Society meeting at the end of September, which is co-located with the Heart Failure Society meeting, in which we will have a booth present there, and we'll be talking to all of our HCM friends there. But simultaneously that weekend, HCMA will be in Orlando at the American Academy of Pediatrics conference to try to start getting our pediatric colleagues to understand HCM a little bit better and the HCM Act. So we will be, for the first time ever, having two booths on the same weekend in September. So Matt, maybe you want to talk a little bit about the HCM Summit, or I'm sorry, HCM Society meeting, and then we'll talk about the Summit.
So coming up September 27th, it's all day. There's two parts to it. If you're a sonographer listening, a nurse practitioner, a PA, there's a whole 101 kind of soup to nuts on one side. Exceptional speakers from Dermot Phelan to Ethan Rowan to Robbie Williams and Melissa Burrows, right from Atlanta, and Austin Berlin. So they're going to run that, and then that's sonographer hands-on education. So if you have a sonographer who needs to learn how to obtain a proper gradient, a Valsalva maneuver, and identify wall thickness, and really know some soup to nuts, the sonographers run that course. It is phenomenal. And the other half, of course, is the main session where, again, an international crowd of superstars who will talk about what's going on in HCM. It kicks it off with top 10 or top features, I guess, of the guidelines from one of the guideline chairs. And then we go from there about what's changing, collaboration with the HFSA. There's a lot going on at that meeting, and I'm excited to tell you it is just about sold out. There's maybe a few seats left. We got to cap it off. We got an email last night saying the fire code says.
I always love those emails. Fire code.
You can't do that. So we had to take out the back row of seats. I'm hoping I'm going to sit somewhere. Otherwise, I'll be doing, my deep knee bends in the back of the room by myself.
I'll be pacing I always leave the seats for everybody else. So I'll be pacing in the back of the room until leave a chair for somebody else.
So all coming, exciting day. And then, of course, leads into the HFSA, right, which is going to have more new data, more exciting things about amyloid, about Fabry therapy, and of course HCM. You're going to hear some follow-ups with that. Really excited. And then just a few weeks after that, we hit the HCM Olympics, right? The HCM Summit. So the granddaddy of them all, been going on long time. The 8th, I believe this is, right? This is the 8th HCM.
The 8th, and I've been to every one of them.
I haven't been to everyone, and exciting. I mean, again, an international crowd. The speakers are a who's who. Even some legends for me. My old mentor, Rick Nishimura, is going to dust off his stethoscope, or at least his speaking ability. Not that he needs it, and he'll be there again. He's retired now. He's living the good life in Colorado, and I was really pumped to see him there. So it's nice to see him coming out and re-educating us as he's done for me for 2 decades.
I love it. We have such a great summer or fall coming up with education between the society and the summit. While everything's kind of circling around thick cards and understanding them, it's amazing to me that the world has aligned itself, and maybe there was a part of me that dreamed someday that we would have all these hubs that we could get all these patients treated in, so we could potentially do clinical trials, and we could then do spoke education and get all the community docs to understand. So even though the girl from Jersey had this crazy idea that I didn't quite know how it was going to play out, honey, it's playing out. It's playing out. And everybody's stepping up to the task, and science is improving because we're all asking harder questions. We're asking deeper questions, and it's a really good time to have a shitty disease like HCM.
Amen. And I mean, even simple stuff like monitoring, right? I mean, there's new data from Ethan Rowan looking at the length of monitoring. We're going to talk about that at the summit. There's a whole symposium he and I are participating in on that. Even things that we thought were staples, we're still saying, boy, now we can do it a little better. No more wires.
Mm-hmm.
Got some sticky patches that work pretty well. Exciting.
They're great, and you don't have to worry about implantable loop monitors maybe quite as much, because the wearable monitors are so much better. So we've got great tech coming out there. And for future conversation, we're going to dive into the question of strain in HCM. So while we've been looking at strain for 20 years, I'm going to put a pin in that one because I'm getting a lot of questions on that. So we're going to come back and talk later about the role of the strain. So we have HFFA, HCMS, we have the summit, and of course we have the HCMA patient meeting. So sign up now. Please join us in Boston. Lots of great things happening. We want to provide you with some on-the-ground education, opportunity to talk with some of our thought leaders, and the opportunity to talk to your fellow patients. So if you haven't signed up, please do now. And unfortunately, I'm going to end this session on a little bit of a somber note. I found out yesterday that we've lost another young life. And I don't know all the details yet as to exactly what happened, but this is a family that was known to us for many years. Sometimes younger people with HCM think they'll worry about it later. I don't know that that's exactly what happened in this situation, but it almost sounds like, just the numbers and the timing. He wasn't quite 30 years old. Please follow up regularly with your HCM specialty team after your diagnosis. Our understanding of disease changes every few years. You're going to get your best possible opinions at the highest level programs that we have. You can find them all at 4hcm.org. Just because you don't feel like you're going to die doesn't mean you're not at risk of sudden death. And I wish a lot of grace to this family and peace, and may their loved one rest in peace. But let us remember that HCM, as well as we are doing with diagnosing and managing, if there are risks, we need to assess them regularly. We need to reassess regularly. HCM can be sneaky and tricky, and even when we've all done the best and we've done our due diligence and we've given all the information, sometimes really bad things happen. So while we're being optimistic about the future, we're still living in the present, and there are people that are at risk and families that are hurting and people who HCM has stolen from us far too early. So remember to check in with your specialists. Remember to listen carefully. Listen to the messages. Absorb the information. If you have questions, ask. If you want support, please call us. If you're not sure what to do, we'll help you get a second opinion or a third opinion. Sometimes you need to hear it from more than one source. And I can tell you without a doubt that every doctor in our network understands that sometimes you need to hear it more than once and from somebody else. They're not going to be insulted if you go get a second opinion. We understand that this is complicated. So please, the work that we're doing is great. The community that we're building is extraordinary, but we're still losing young lives. And we need to make sure that we're protecting them all. So to the family in grief, my sincere condolences for your loss. To those of you who understand exactly what I'm talking about, we live in shared grief, and we never quite get all the way over it. We just do something different with our grief as time goes on. So remember where we all kind of came from. And most of us got into advocacy because of loss and pain. Yeah. And our job is to try to minimize that in others. So I thank our sponsors, our partners, and everybody in our ecosystem that's helping make the world a little bit better for those with HCM every day. Matt, thank you as always for your partnership, your friendship, your care of these wonderful patients in our community. And I thank you all for listening to Tales from the Heart, a podcast.
Thanks for having me. Another super session.
They always are. Okay, guys, pass it along, and remember to sign up for the conferences. Take care. And we are